Okay, let us start by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, wa man tabi'ahu bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Very good evening. So I hope that everyone is doing well, and I hope that the line, the connection will be stable until we finish. Otherwise, this might create a problem. Okay, we have, because we missed one class, there was the Nuzul Quran. Yes, let us try how we can cope up with the content of the course. So we have discussed the first two topics. We look at the general overview about the course itself. Then we managed to understand the religious methodology. And today we're going to look at the philosophical methodology, its meaning and scope. So here, maybe perhaps you have heard about this previously, because when you look at philosophy, uh, it was established as a discipline by itself before they focused on the study of religion. So we cannot say that philosophy was established just only for the purpose of studying religion. If we go back to maybe according to what has been mentioned by the existing literature that I have referred to, so maybe you have heard about the conversation between Socrates and Plato. And I mean, Socrates is playing the role of an ignorant person in that conversation. It was a very long conversation, and he mentioned many issues in that conversation. So he was playing the role like the student and the teacher, but he raised many questions and he put himself in a position that he did not know. It's like you might meet any person and that person will ask you many questions. So how are you going to respond? So that conversation was recorded, and that was very fundamental for philosophy, because if you go back to how philosophy was introduced, of course, that does not mean that others did not use philosophical approach. We have other civilizations beside the Greek civilization, but others we can say maybe they mixed with religion. If you look at Hindus, they used philosophy. If we look at Egyptians and Persians, they used philosophy, but they mixed that with religion. It was a part of the religious system that they had. Whereas when you look at the Greek philosophers, so they were trying to prove through human reasoning that A is A. So they consider that reasoning or logic, it is very fundamental. You don't have to refer to any source outside the human logic to justify that A is A. So that was how they responded to the Greek society during the time. Maybe we can say the intention was not to ridicule the belief system that the Greeks had, but the intention, like when you look at the contemporary time, let's say the last 200 years, how they dismissed the religious representation, but during the time they were not trying to dismiss religious representation, but they were trying to prove that what these religious people believed should, or it was supposed, if I say, supposed to be justified by human reasoning. So that was the intention at the early stage. If you go back to Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, when they use this, because these are the famous, Greek philosophers, and we have mentioned, maybe if you have taken Western methodology, Anaximander and Thales and others, and we look at it, and Philo as well. But Philo, he comes later on, but he look at it from religious perspective, because to some extent he was affected by Christianity. But these people, they were pure philosophers, if I may say, because they are trying to use reasoning to think about the existence, about the creation, about concepts, let's say life, about what will happen next, life in this world and life after death. because they look at it from the metaphysical perspective. But of course, we are talking about men. They were trying to justify, if we say, the existence and everything that is a part of it or within it through logic, if we say, reasoning and argumentations. Because when you look at this, the way they provided arguments, they were justified by human reasoning. But you can say that they were trying to put forward certain questions. Maybe the religious people, I mean, the Greeks were not prepared to answer these questions because they put this religion, I mean, the rational questions to them. And when you look at the reality, could be because when you look at those religious clergies in the past were used by the leaders as a means or as a tool to oppress the masses or to govern the masses. Now they did not, maybe they follow it the way they believed, and they did not allow the human reasoning to work properly. Because that is how, if you look at philosophy in general, it will look at a particular community, especially the way they are thinking and the way they are trying to justify what they have. It is like if we have a community that follows any way of life, if I say that, or any religion, or any custom, or any tradition, or any culture that is very complex and there are contradictions. If there are contradictions, what they are trying to tell us, I mean, philosophers, so they use human reasoning to justify and to put these contradictions away. I mean, to get rid of these contradictions and conflicts. Now, if we raise the question how man will be able to get rid of these contradictions that are created by people, if these philosophers do not have or they do not have any divine source, because the source that they refer to it is based on human reasoning. So everything that is justified by human reasoning to be, like I said, A is A, then they'll accept. Otherwise, it is rejected. But as I mentioned before, how? Because we have even Muslims that have been affected by this, I mean, idea or let's say mindset or maybe this trend, if I say. It has been there even today. I remember even educated people that are teaching these courses. So they were trying to tell us that philosophy is helping us to improve ourselves, to justify ourselves, and even the way we follow religion. So if that is the case, then philosophy will become a separate body of knowledge that will stand by itself. If we look at it, let's say we have religious methodology, as we mentioned before. Now we are talking about philosophical methodology. So if we are separating this, then philosophy will stand by itself as a body of knowledge. Later on, we can compare when we are going to look at case studies. Then you can see how we can differentiate between the religious methodology, philosophical methodology, and the scientific methodology based on the cases that we are going to, look at it. Now, this is the reality here, because if we look at it as a separate body of knowledge, then it can justify itself by the way how it provides justification related to certain issues that are, raised by people. Of course, these are perceptions because philosophy is focusing more on perceptions and concepts. But they look at it how when people claim that they believe in something and they don't act properly. You see that they're looking because they will not be able to understand these perceptions or concepts that are followed by people, and these are helping them to mold their understanding about the existence. If we talk about the worldview, if you look at the worldview, because all this will help people to develop or to form their worldview. The view they say about the existence as a whole. If we talk about the reality, it is related to the truth and the way how people look at this reality. So the methods that they use, they are related to the way how they are helping themselves to justify the views that they use in relationship with the surrounding, if we look at it from that perspective, because they might use different views according to their background. You might find in a community that people might think, because it is a way of thinking. If you look at philosophers, believe that this is a way of thinking, how people think to justify what they believe, if I say, or what they, think about it. If we don't say what they believe, what they think about, something that they attach themselves to it. It is like if a person looks at the surrounding, maybe the surrounding is the whole existence, but depends if you say the whole surrounding, and maybe you can look at the limited surrounding that the person is attached to. So maybe this will make him to have a comprehensive way of thinking about as a whole, and a very specific way of thinking related to what to the thing that he's getting access very closely. This is how we might look at it from that situation, because philosophers, of course, they look at how people use reasoning about the way, how they justify the way of thinking through reasoning and logic, if we say. Maybe because some of them, they believe that logic, it is a method that is used by philosophers, and they have this the thinking. That is another method that they use, and the argument, because they use arguments. Now, when they think and raise questions, they use arguments. Now, arguments, they are used for what at the end, what is going to happen, and it is justification. Now, if we can say, if we said that they have one method, it is logic, another one it is if we say that thinking, another one it is justification. So if they believe that these are the three methods that they use, that are used by philosophers, and now, of course, if we say that these methods, according to what philosophers think about, are used by them in order to justify certain things that are, if we say, grasped by the senses. Now, if you look at the senses, because philosophers, they look at things that are going to be beyond senses. Now, if we say scientists, they use reasoning, but reasoning that is limited to the empirical understanding of reality when they use the human senses. But philosophers, they go beyond the limits that are set by the empirical existence. So that will make a difference between, if you look at the philosophers and others. We don't say that philosophers, they don't use senses, but they don't use laboratories to experiment what they observe, basically, and what they see. You see, if they see something, they observe it, they experience, because here, philosophy, instead of experiment, they use experiment to experience things that they go through. Because now, if we say that through observation, they go through a process of thinking. If we look at it, how it is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used the term in the Quran, al-basira. You see, al-basira, then we have ru'ya. All nadar. You see, we said that somebody is yanzuru fihi, is looking at it. That's why the nadar came as a concept to be used by Muslim scholars when they provide arguments and evidences. Now we can say this nadar, it is intellectual discourse to justify certain things. It could be like to a level of debate, you refute things. Now, if we can say, okay, al-basira, now we can say basira, it is beyond, when you are going to look at things beyond the physical eyes that we have, because it is a way how we look at the reality through the inner aspect of understanding it. That's why when philosophers go into a deep understanding, if we say deep way of thinking to understand certain things, so they use that, the inner aspect, that they don't justify the way we justify. Basically, so here I just want you to understand the way how philosophers, they build the way of thinking. That is very important for us. If we understand how they build the way they think, then we are able to solve the problem. So let us say now at the beginning, as I mentioned before, that philosophy started not to attack, if I say, religion, even though there was a clash, but they were trying to, because if they had that in mind, then religions like we have today, especially those religions that were not having any source, when you look at the Greek popular religion, was going to vanish, you know. But yet we can say the leaders, they continue to keep the clergies. So they had the philosophers on one hand and the clergies on the other hand. So we can say these two, even though there was a clash, why? Because if that was meant the purpose to get rid of religion, but they were trying to justify it is clear, like we do the same thing, you know. So I think this would be a very polite approach. Instead of like scientists or humanists, they say, let us get rid of religion. So get rid of religion. You don't allow people, religious people, practice religion. Get rid of them. Minimize the existence in the community. Even the application of religion. Don't allow them to bring it outside from their private affairs. You know, like at home, let them. So that was the process of secularization. Now, if we can say that philosophers did not use the same approach. I mean, this is based on what I have understood, you know, because if they use that, then they were going to get rid like atheists, they don't believe in God. Whereas if you look at this conversation between Plato, I mean, Socrates and Plato, it is great, you know, because they are, even he is raising questions related to the concept of God. So that is very fundamental when you look at philosophy at large, because philosophy, they wanted to justify when they presented the case to the Greek popular religion, they wanted to justify to them that God is not something that you are trying to tell us, maybe anything that you see is God, but God is something that is beyond the human imagination. So, according to them, that's why they use reasoning. Is not like you are going to imagine that God is so and so, but God is beyond, and that's why you have to use the human reasoning to justify that everything that we see, the heavenly body, the existence. So there might be someone who is running. And I said that's why the concept of prime mover came into existence. So they developed this concept that this ultimate intelligence that created everything. So that is how the philosophers use this approach, if I can say. They were trying to make sure that people will not believe in what they thought, that moon and sun and stars and whatever it is, the river, everything, there was God, you know. So they wanted to justify that God is not like that. But of course, I mean, as I mentioned, that this is through the human, this is a human contribution. It is the way how a person is trying to use his faculty of thinking to justify something that is beyond his ability. Easily, because when you look at man's ability is very limited if the outside, if we say ability that is provided by God, if we say, I mean, from our perspective, as we mentioned, we have revelation and we have human. Now, we believe that if philosophers use the human reasoning according to the way God created them, I mean, Allah created them sound understanding of the reality, then perhaps they can reach to certain levels, and this level that they reach to should be justified by revelation. But if they don't follow revelation, then this will continue. That's why, I mean, the philosophers, they try to speculate facts, you know, when there is question and they believe that whatever they justify to be right according to the way they think it is right, then this will be taken into consideration. Anything else is not accepted by them. It is like if we argue with them and they argue with us, and if we justify, let's say, and they justify, then we reach to certain common understanding, then we can say for certain things that we have in common can be accepted. It is like maybe we can say like a kind of reconciliation that can be made between us and them to certain levels that are in common. But if we talk about things that are beyond the human way of thinking, so that is the weakness of philosophy, if I can say that, you know. So even though I can say that yes, philosophers, they use different methods because if we look at it from different perspective, logic, if we say how logic will be used as a method, and how, I mean, justification, it is used as a method. Now they are using different tools It is like what approach are you going to use to justify the logical methodology as something, I mean, if we can say that reliable, that we can rely on it, how we can use that, how we can make use of it. If I say, sometimes you say that even logic doesn't accept. So how people argue what kind of logic they're talking about? If we are talking about the logic that is used by philosophers, then it will have a different connotation compared to the logic that is used by other people. So we have to understand this. We cannot just simply, because we are caught, even Muslims today, I mean religious people in general, and Muslims in particular. So we are caught by this kind of dilemma. When others talking about, then they say, oh, it is in the Quran. Oh, Allah has mentioned this in the Quran. Oh, our Prophet ﷺ did so. So we are, I mean, we are, because we are not justifying it. So that requires a justification. That's why you can see here, philosophers, they use logic. This is the way how the thinking start with, because they are going to justify how a proper thinking should be used by people in order to make sure that this is not contradictory to the sound logic that they have. If we say that the logic, that is the intellect that God created people. So what will justify that this is the right logic that people use? Because they are connected with one another. It is the way people think. So the way they think, this will provide the justification that they use the right logic, but it requires a wisdom. You know that a philosopher, they use the word wisdom. Now, is it the same wisdom that Allah has mentioned in the Quran, al-hikmah? Are philosophers using the same wisdom like prophets, like messengers, like religious people? So what kind of direction do they have? And what kind of, I mean, if we say that the way they use it, what kind of context they use it? So that is very important for us to understand this. So if you have any question, maybe I can share I prepared some of the slides. So do you have any question? Maybe you see this is what okay, I think, okay. You see here, maybe I use this like a catching point. Maybe this is how, if we say philosophers are, if they believe that this is a way of thinking. Now, have you seen the term that they use for philosophers? Peripatis. Peripatis, al-masha'iyun in Arabic. Peripatis, because philosophers, there will not be anything to justify questions that are raised by them, because there will be a continuity of questions. That's why you see every time you see them, they're thinking, every time they're thinking. Compared to religious people, of course, we use thinking, but our thinking is justified. But how do they justify thinking when I say that if we have this chain of connections, we have human logic, that is intellect, if we say that, the way of thinking, these are the thoughts. Then we have the justification that is done through expressions, the discourse that comes out when people formulate what they're going to say, expression and the act itself. So justification will be done through what is seen. Otherwise, nobody will be able to understand what is in the logic or intellect of somebody and the way he's going to establish his thoughts and views. So that would be, I mean, something that is hidden, nobody knows, unless people are going to present the case the way they see it. Then they can correct. Maybe you can say, some people say that they put assumptions. They put forward these assumptions. Whether these assumptions are justified or not, I don't know if I can use this. Okay. Is it okay like this or how? Can you see?
Okay, sir.
Okay, okay, doctor.
Okay, sir.
Now you can see here, maybe I just want to refresh you about the term philosophy. Maybe you have gone through it before. Now you can see that even now when you look at epistemology, epistema, it is knowledge. Philosophy, it is the terms that are used from the Greek word philosophia. I mean, like philos or philos, which means love, which denotes friendship, affection, affinity for, Now it is like in the process of acquisition of knowledge. So if we look at it from that perspective, we try to understand things. And when we understand things, then we get closer with things. It is like when we have knowledge about our friend, then we get closer with him, then we show this compassion. That can be how, because philosophy, what brought them together, because they had something in common that they're looking for. Every community, we have this kind of affiliation that they get close to each other. And you can see this the first, if we say philo, that is the love and friendship. And the second one, that it is like maybe philosophers, when if we look at it from their perspective, but if you look from a religious perspective, that will give us a different connotation. Like Sophos signifies a sage, a wise one. Can you say only philosophers are wise people? Can you say only philosophers are wise people? How do you think? Do you believe that only philosophers are wise people?
No,
No.
no.
Then how? How you justify? Why they are telling us that philosophers are wise people? How can you justify?
Because philosophers only holding towards their reasoning.
So we can say that's why you make them wise.
No, they are not the most wise people on the earth, but that's my argumentation that they only holding on their own reasoning, so that they are not the most wise people.
But there is a kind of wisdom. If we say they have wisdom as well. Huh? So when you talk about, as you mentioned, they are not they don't have like comprehensive understanding about the reality. If we said the way they argue and the way they, try to solve the problem, because this is related how to solve the problem, and they are focusing on the mindset. So if we say that like prophets, they targeted the mindset of people, and philosophers, they target the mindset of people. Now, if you look at a prophet or a messenger, like if you look at Luqman al-Hakim, for example, so Luqman was a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the hikmah that he used, is it the same hikmah like the philosophers are using? The wisdom. Yes, Faiza.
Maybe yes. Maybe like a philosopher.
So you say maybe yes or maybe no or what? Or just maybe yes. You say if you say maybe, you are not sure.
Yeah. For me, I think Luqman Hakim is kind of like a philosopher
Are you sure?
because for me, I think because Allah give him the hikmah because he has the wisdom to, relate the religion and also the reality of life.
No, that is right, Faiza. That is how you look at it, Okay, maybe we can others let us see how they can say it. Because if you look at philosophers, the wisdom, it is based on what? If you say which indicates wisdom, knowledge, skill, practical wisdom, or experience. Here we can talk about experience that I mentioned. People go through it, or intelligence. So now they are developing this kind of, if we say this kind of intellectual development, or maybe personality. If you look at the personality or character of the philosopher, so that character is developed on what basis? If you say love, friendship, can you say that the Sufis are like philosophers? Are they philosophers, or they are not philosophers? If you look at the Sufis, like Ibn Arabi, for example. Yes, who was talking?
Me, Dr. Nisa.
Okay, Nisa, yeah.
I think yes, Sufis are one of the group from philosophers.
So now, how you justify this? No, Nisa. So what will
Because
make a philosopher to be a philosopher?
as we all know, okay, philosophers, the main source is their reasoning and their wisdom. So Sufis also using their wisdom uh, to take action, to make decisions. So I think they also can be seen as philosophers.
Yeah, we can say those deviant Sufis. Because when they used wisdom like the philosophers, they created problems, like Muslim philosophers. Is it clear? So when they use this kind of wisdom that philosophers are talking about and a way of thinking, so that created a problem because they might think that, okay, a wise man could be anyone. It's not necessarily related to any religion. Even an atheist can be a wise man if we look at the general perspective, because the way they use reasoning, yes, we agree with that, But this kind of wisdom, it is partial. It is not comprehensive wisdom. You see, as we know that Allah created these abilities in every human being, and depends how people use it. But we don't say that they are using the wisdom that Allah has given to them. That will make them when they decide on behalf of themselves, and that is what they claim it is from them. Then this wisdom, it is not related to what Allah has given to them. So we have to make it very clear. That's why it is very partial. They're not able to see the reality the way it should be seen. But they can see a part of the reality according to the way they use the limited abilities, because they don't allow the abilities to see the reality the way it should be. It is like they're limiting the abilities, even though the abilities that they have are, if we say that, are comprehensive, because those who are able to see the truth through the same abilities, it means that anyone else can do it. If we say philosophy, they reach to this level, but they did not reach the level of the prophets and the messengers. Is it clear? Now we can say messenger and prophets are not philosophers. If we look at Muslims, are we philosophers? We are not philosophers. Because if we say we are philosophers, uh, then we are going to categorize ourselves like them. That will make, because if you talk about being a pure philosopher, then you have to justify. Basically, we are more than a philosopher. Basically, like we said that we are more than a scientist. We are more than a philosopher. Now, if you look at, I hope you got the point. Yes, Nisa, you want to say something?
Doctor, so is it wrong for us to label ourselves or maybe label other thinkers, which is particularly in Muslim community as philosophers? Is it wrong?
I think because a Muslim scholar is more than a philosopher, Nisa. We can say a Muslim philosopher, yes, a Muslim scientist, yes. But we have to make sure that this Muslim philosopher doesn't think like the Greek philosophers. Is it clear? So we make sure about that. That's why previously, why these names were given to certain Muslim scholars, because they divided revelation from human reasoning. That's why we have Muslim philosophers. But do we call Imam al-Ghazali a Muslim philosopher? Do we say that he's a Muslim philosopher? Do we call, even though he studied philosophy, he used in his book Al-Mustasfa, he wrote about mantiq, logic, at the beginning. So do we say that Imam al-Ghazali is a philosopher? Or we brand him as a Muslim scholar? And we say Hujjatul Islam. We have the title is given to him, authority about looking at this from Islamic perspective. So how, this will make a difference. That's why when we have to write wisdom, we say the wisdom that is given to people by Allah. If we talk about prophets and messengers and Muslims, we believe from our perspective that it's justified by revelation, then you can say the hikmah that Allah has given to us by guiding us. So that will make a difference. Because the hikmah that is used by Al-Hakim, this is one of the attributes of Allah. Al-Hakim, now, can we use the same word and relate this to philosophy? That's why you can say Now you understand that the limitation, when I talk about the scope of philosophical methodology, it is very limited. Why? Because it is based on human reasoning and it lacks of what? What does it lack? Are you here or not? I mean, don't think about the iftar, we have time.
Lack of revelation.
Yeah, that's right. Lack of hidayah. We said the hidayah, revelation, no? Because Allah guides people even when they use the intellect properly. If they don't know about revelation, then Allah will be fair with them. Like these philosophers, they justified, they said the moon and the star are not God. So, okay, they reached to certain level that they said there is God. But if there was the ability for them, if we said that Allah sent to other communities and they were aware of it, that God sent revelation and they did not follow or they rejected, then they will be in trouble. Like today, we have people, they know that God has sent revelation. Is it clear? So are they able to tell us, oh, I didn't hear, when on the day of judgment, when Allah will ask them, and they are very good people, you see, they are very good, they use reasoning properly. When they judge people, they are very fair, like we have many among them. But will that be sufficient for them? They will be accounted for that, but at the same time, they will be asked. So you heard, they'll say, yes, we heard about it. Then why you didn't follow? Why you didn't search? So that will be the question that will be raised on the day of judgment for these people. I mean, this is a reality, but if they did not hear anything, and of course, Allah knows everything, Allah will present everything. So that's why we have to understand the philosophical connotation as well as religious connotation of these concepts. Because we are talking about two different perspectives. If you say two different methods or methodologies, or maybe we can say two different worldviews. Is it clear? The Islamic worldview, it has a source and it is established based on the source. And our perception, it is governed by that source. Is it clear? Whereas philosophers, what source do they have? If we say that if they have human reasoning as a source or logic, then this does not help. I mean, philosophy to be sublime, to be everything. Because people believe, we have even today many trends that they are telling us that philosophy justifies everything. Like everyone will do that. Every community is going to claim that what he has is the best. I mean, we don't doubt in that. But if we put this kind of argumentation that they use, so how they can justify that what they say it is right? Is it clear? So they use these tricks. I mean, if I say speculations, it is like a person, even we have this many Muslim, in our community, we have many Muslims who follow these certain orders. So they are trying to blind people. How do they make people blind? Because ignorance is among these people. They don't see the truth the way it should be. So when we have ignorant Muslims, they follow things blindly. And if they see somebody, the way he talks, they're, I mean, thrilled by his talking, they will start to believe in him. And they forgot that they have to believe in Allah, but they believe in him and whatever he says, and they don't object anything. So that is a problem. Ezekiel, I mean, this should be, when we look at the philosopher, they open the door. And if you look at Muslim scholars, they open the door. They did not allow this, that people will follow them and take it, whatever they say, as sublime. But if philosophers allow this to happen, then nobody was going to tell them that you are right or you are wrong within their community. Because this is subjected to change. If we look at the human reasoning, it is subjected to change. So they don't have any stable source that will provide for them any kind of justification. And as I mentioned, if they justify based on what they see and based on experience, that is very limited. And you can see here, I mean, when we combine this together, love of knowledge or wisdom, the attempt to describe the ultimate and real nature of reality. So that, I mean, this is an attempt, is it clear? Like we use it, like we say, okay, this is an attempt, because it is. Why we say an attempt and we don't say it is 100%, Why this is an attempt? Can you think? Now you look at the water there, maybe here we use the Sufi approach, you see, I brought this photo here that you can reflect on it. Now, if you use that experience that you go through, when you look at this, are you going to look at the water just like that or what? If you are going to think at the water, how do you see it? You say, wow, it is very beautiful. You say this is when you look at this skin, for example, you can say that the skin that you can say this is very beautiful. Uh, so how do you look at it from the philosophical perspective? How do you think? How do you use if you say is an attempt, now you make an attempt to tell us that what you see, it is true and it is not AI. It is not modified by AI. How do you justify? If you said this is the true nature that we can see, if I go out to the forest, I can find the same thing because I have to prove that what I can see here, it is the same reality that is found outside there. But if we use AI, would that justify? How do I know? So how do you think? Why we use the word attempt? Yes, anyone else? Yeah, please just try to say anything. So this is philosophy. You want to say anything, you say anything. Yes, Aman.
It is called attempt because it is actually not true knowledge. It is just based on assumptions by
Okay.
their experience, their what they see. Yeah,
So when you say that attempt, it is what?
assumption.
Assumption. It is like is that, if we say, is that comprehensive?
Actually, it varies from person to person how they perceive it.
So if I ask you, Aman, do you see this, attempt that you make now, you made an attempt to justify something, because when I ask you what is this, then you are trying to provide justification to convince us that what you say it is right. Would that be sufficient? If you look at the reality,
I think it will, yeah.
are you sure that if we use an attempt to describe the ultimate and real nature of reality, if you say, will that justify our perception about the reality?
Oh,
Actually, I should provide more facts, I think, for the people to believe, not just an attempt, right?
So then we are trying to say they should go beyond the limits of philosophy.
Yes, yes.
Because we are religious people, but if you look at it, as you mentioned, we have different communities and they think differently, yeah? Yes, Nisa, I saw that you came in and out.
I think Brother Ahmad has answered, but we cannot use, we cannot assume or making our assumption in describing or finding the truth about the reality. Because yes, philosophy is kind of limited.
Yeah, okay, that is good. Can you say that will be partial? If you say I attempt, you attempt, after a while another will attempt, is that partial?
You say partial, doctor?
Yeah, is that partial? Is not, if we say it's partial, it means like you are looking
It's
at,
not comprehensive.
yes, you are looking at the tree from the side that you see. It is,
Yes.
if
It's
I
partial.
look, if I look at a person, we look at the front of the person, because when I talk with people, they face each other, but I don't see what is beyond what I see. That's why here it is based on this reasoning. So that is, assumption that they can make, but the assumptions are not they don't prove assumption like scientists in laboratory, but they are trying to prove through the experience. So through the experience and the way of thinking, it is like sometimes they tell us, okay, think. Now you think, then you go back to what? So what will help us to bring, if I ask you a question, maybe that is related to what we discussed in the first class. So what will make you will provide the answer to this question? Will that be the way of thinking or not? If my thinking, let's say maybe another element that we need is if a person is, is forgetful person, if he forget things very fast, so that doesn't work. Because we can say when we engage ourselves through this thinking, this can help us to create this awareness, to develop, and to expand, if I say. It is like we Muslims who use dhikr. You see why we use dhikr. We believe that dhikr will help us to remember things. This will strengthen our faculty of remembering. Basically, the intellect will become more. Now, if we use, because we engage that, the same thing goes to them. It is like a person who is thinking, asking questions, then this is making this will be a continuity. So that is not like the person who doesn't ask questions. It's not like a person who is using his limits of, his abilities within the scope that he sees. It is like, if I look at myself within the boundaries that I set, let's say within my office, that does not help, That's why philosophers, they want beyond the limits that were set by people, beyond the empirical understanding of the reality. So they use the reason to overcome all these empirical boundaries and to look at the metaphysical aspect. So that is very important. So how can we see the metaphysical aspect? Through the empirical boundaries. Like if we can say we see the moon. Now, if we say moon is God, then unless people have the perception that God is transcendental, if they don't have the perception, are they going to tell us that moon is not God? Would they be able to do that? So how do you think? We have those who reject, like physics, we have scientists, atheists, they believe in physics. They believe in laws of nature, physics, but they don't believe in God. They don't say that God is one or there is somebody, deity, let's say, like philosophers. Something that is like a deity that mechanically or a rational being. So how do you think that will make a difference? So try to think about this. These are very important for us to understand because you might come across this and how you're going to respond. Now, maybe you heard about Pythagoras, according to what has been mentioned there, being a Greek philosopher. So they believe that he was the first one to be called with this name, philosopher. For him, what is meant, Sophia, you see here, love for knowledge. What I have, I got it from the source when he said that the knowledge of the underlying reasons of causes for things as they appear to us, knowing the reasons why a thing is what it is. Now, this is very clear, so if people ask questions and they use this faculty of thinking, and they are trying to provide answers to the questions that they raise. This is the worldview. When we talk about the worldview, how we justify. If we say that, okay, but you can say that what made you to ask this question? If I say now, I'm telling you that why, how do you look at it? How do you respond? Then maybe they'll keep silent. We say what is making you to keep silent, and someone will say something, and we both ask the same question. So what made you to be silent, and what made you to say something? So are we saying that those who are silent, they are not using the thinking, the ability of thinking, and the one that is speaking, he or she used the way of thinking and responded? Can we say that, can we look at it from that perspective, or we look at both parties are thinking, but maybe we have some of those people who think they need time to to justify, to look at what they are trying to observe, to absorb first before they say something. And we can say those who are they have a fast way of digesting things, and the way of thinking is very fast in them, and some others. But we have even some those who respond immediately. Maybe they might say nonsense, so we might say that we have three categories of people. All of them are used in thinking. If we look at it, reasoning, how they justify that their reasoning, it is right reasoning, and it is responding or is providing the right answer to the question that is raised. How do you justify this? So what you make you say that what you say it is right, and what others are saying it is wrong. If we use a general ruling that, okay, if we say that A should be A, but how do you justify that A should be A? Maybe A should be B, not A, because this is how philosophers play this, this way. It is like something, if we say that yes, we know the car appears in front of us, but we say, what is making the car to appear in front of me? And why the car does not appear in another place in front of somebody else? If we say the same car, but it appears in front of me, So what is making the car? If we apply this, the reasons of causes for things that as they appear to us, And when we know the reason, are we able to justify? Now, will the car appear by itself? How do you think? Try to think. This is philosophy. Those who were in our department, maybe they took a course with Prof. Isham, Dr. Isham Bawani, about philosophy, or other lectures that we have. So I'm trying you to look at it from different perspectives, but within the limit of human reasoning, in order to understand how philosophers rationalize things and how they justify what they say. So do we agree if we said that, okay, if the reason is justified, when you look at the reason behind something that is causing something to appear in front of us, so will we be happy? So how do you think? So can you give us an example? I hope you have understood. Yes, I'm waiting. Huh? Are you here or not? Do you hear what I'm saying or not?
Yes.
Then please, try to think. Yeah, can you give us an example to justify it? Okay, think. I'm waiting for the answer. So I look at it in the philosophy like in order to understand let's say the scope, furthermore the limits of philosophy. As I mentioned before, it could be like an worldview, and you can see these are the main principles that, according to how philosophers trying to understand the reality, because they look at things like self-evident and undeniable to the mind. Now, is this accepted? If we say self-evident and undeniable to the mind. Now, if we talk about philosophical mind, if we look at philosophical mind that is following the right way of reasoning, it is like if we said that they try to justify that a tree is a tree. But of course, philosophers, they will not look at the tree as the way we see it as a tree, but they go beyond what is behind the tree. So that is the projection of philosophers. So philosophers, they are trying to tell us, okay, the tree we can see is a tree based on observation, but if we go through the human experience, then this tree will lead us to a different world, and that is a metaphysical world. I think it is like they have this way how they look at metaphysics through the eyes of the physics. If we say looking at the metaphysical world through the lens of physical world. So because man is here, so man is not living in a world that people, they don't see him. But we can see him. A philosopher is seen to us, is a human being like us. But how he is trying to justify something that others do not justify. I mean, will that be accepted if they can say, okay, demonstration and deduction? So they use this theory like we mentioned, if you provide the causes or the reasons that are causing this thing, and if these reasons are, I mean, like we say, if I want to study a subject related to a particular maybe community or related to a religious community or culture community or whatever it is, now we said that then you have to identify the reasons that made you to study this particular subject, and these reasons will lead you to justify the problems that are faced by this community. You have like the reasons will motivate us, At the same time, these reasons will help you to justify the problem. So how do you do this, Are we going to say when I go to let's say if I go, now we can say maybe we have shortage of rice, for example. Now I want us to know why we have shortage of rice. Is it clear? So can we use observation? Yes, I go and observe. Now maybe I go there and I try to think why these people, they don't, the way they plant maybe the in the paddy fields, maybe is wrong, the way they do it, or the way they, the method that they use, for example. Then, but how do I know? Maybe I can look at, can we say that maybe if we look at beyond, maybe they plant the rice during the wrong time, for example. So that is related beyond metaphysics. We said that, okay, we know the creation is based on the 4 seasons, maybe that can be justified, So that can be how these people, they don't look at it because something that you can see, So what is making this? And if we say that everything is happening in the right time, because that is how it justified, that we can say when it is the right time. If we don't limit it into what is observed by people, but we have to go beyond this observation. So that's why the philosophers they bring in the divine perspective, But this divine perspective, it is based on human reasoning. That's why they justify something that will bring people to the top outside from this world, if we say outside from this world, and make them responsible. You see, it is very difficult, if I may say, to look at that from that situation, but this might help people to understand the reality, And you can see the way how they try to, because the language of the philosophers, it is very, very different compared to the language of others. And you can see that philosophers are very particular about language, and language not just only a language by the name, but a language as a discipline by itself. You see the terms, how we are going to choose, the structure of the sentence. And I say that maybe the discipline, the language is divided into different disciplines by itself because it is a body of knowledge, separate body of knowledge by itself. And what are the terms that are used by philosophers? You see, now it is like if we said that, yes, we use the term reasoning, but what kind of reasoning is used by philosophers? And of course, another important thing here that we make, as I mentioned, justification, it is related to ethics, is related to ethics. That's why, I mean, for them to justify, even though we know that some of them, they don't care about the way they behave, but they are very much concerned about values. If you look at philosophers, But if we ask about today, maybe some of them, they're not up to that level. But the real philosophers were very, fond of this justification that should be done. Whatever people have in their intellect, they have to think properly, because otherwise, if you see, then this will provide a wrong justification that will lead to the corruption. Maybe we can say this person is corrupted. Why? Because it is contradictory to the logic. It is like if, say, one person is behaving like this, another one is behaving differently. Now, if we have a community, then we think, philosophers, if we look at them as a community, now if one philosopher will go out of the community, then that would be a strange thing for this community. Like we Muslims, we have that, don't we say how we justify that this Muslim is acting according to Islam? What will make us, because we know how a Muslim should behave. Is it clear? Now, philosophers, they know how a person should behave based on the right thinking. So that is how they justify, So that should not contradict. Maybe you know this, in Hinduism, they have this, the feelings, thoughts, and acts, Feelings, thoughts, and acts should be equal if we use the same approach. But you say what to make the feelings, thought, and acts to be justified, to be parallel. It is like if a person is thinking if he's feeling something and he's going to think about it, then he's going to act according to it. If we use our approach, we justify, like we say in amalu biniyat. So we have an intention to do, but we have a will before we intend something to do. Now, what will limit our intention and our will? It is like what they follow. So philosophers, they have created a worldview, and this worldview is justified according to these principles. And we agree, we don't have a problem. Is it clear? Because if they use pure reasoning without speculation, then this can be justified by revelation. So for us, it is very easy, because we justify human reasoning by using revelation. But how these people justify others' reasoning? By using human reasoning. So that's why there should be a kind of system that is why they created this system, for them to justify, and evaluate. Now you can see here, here I just wanted you to understand the philosophical methodology. So I believe that the methodology, it is a set of methods that involves a commitment to reason and argument as a source of knowledge. So they believe, because now if for them there is no any source of knowledge, is it clear? But they use reason as such, because that like a person that commits himself to reasoning and arguments, it is like a process. If we can say is a process, how a person is attaching himself to something based on his commitment. It is like philosophers are committing themselves to this, and they believe that through human reasoning, sound human reasoning, they can provide sound arguments, and that is how a knowledge will come out, the outcome. When we look at the outcome, if they said, okay, moon, it is, as I mentioned before, what made them, being, part of the Greek community, what made these people to believe, or to think, if I say, to think and justify that moon, is not God, because knowing the fact that these people, their own people, believe that moon is God. If we raise this question, how we justify, It is like we have Muslims. We say, what will make this Muslim to behave like a non-Muslim? Because he should behave like a Muslim. So how he can justify, Is it clear? If we raise these questions. So what will make it? Now we said that is a lack of commitment, Is it clear? Because if we say that if these people, because the Greek, popular religion, you see you think that the clergies, they did not know what they were doing. They knew it, but others have followed blindly. And these people, when they committed themselves, they look at it that, okay, why should I? Look at a person the way he thinks, and his thinking is not used properly. So they use properly the thinking properly. It is like if they see that the moon is disappearing, partially, then how come, if they believe that God should control everything, if that was that perception, then this is contradictory to the reality. That's why the argument that they provide should not contradict the reality that is established based on the human intellect or logic. That's why I mentioned it was believed at the early stage that reason could determine facts about reality as opposed to the ways the senses reveal it. How? How do you think we have certain how people behave, when you look at the senses? How do you understand this statement? The reason could determine facts about reality as opposed to the ways the senses reveal it. Now, if you say the way senses reveal it is what? How the senses? I mean, senses they are related to which part of the world? Are you here? Are you thinking or not? Yeah, you might say that now we are in the fasting month of Ramadan, so we don't want to spoil our own way of thinking. You might be afraid that this might affect your way of thinking. Then you'll be thinking and you forget about iftar. But let us come back, and I mean, I just want you to think and to argue, to open for discussion. I mean, this is very important here. Otherwise, it will be difficult. So if yes,
Doctor,
yes.
maybe the point is talking about the reason only could determine the facts and not based on experiences or the senses, how we feel.
Why? What is the difference between reason and senses, Brother Rahman?
Everything we sense might not be uh, considered as reason. What we think and I mean, it could be not be reasoned. I mean, like everything we sense.
Are you sure? Now, when you say that senses are what?
Our senses like the what we see and hear and all
And these are related to what part of the world, Salsabila?
physical.
Metaphysical.
Yes, 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 Salsabila.
Physical,
Physical. Yeah, physical. So now reason is related to what?
metaphysical, beyond physical.
So now can we travel through the senses?
No.
Now you understand. That's why
Uh,
because the senses it is like what I can touch, what you can see, what you can feel. You see. But can you say that what we when reason we go through reason? If I tell you now, okay, can you go back to Kampung now?
no.
Can you go through the senses?
Uh,
Can you go through the senses now? If I
yes.
can we go? Can you touch now?
Uh,
Can you shake hand with your mom?
uh,
Can you now because let's say you are here in
uh,
if
cannot.
but if you use the reasoning, if you say the thinking now, because reasoning it is like based on experience that we have gone through. Now
Uh,
we get because we go like I have been there, physically I have been there. Now when I use reasoning, because the experience is telling me, even now the way I was there, I can go. You see,
mm,
that's why they say now even they use the word imagination. You see, but
mm.
we say that the imagination from their perspective is different from a religious approach. Huh? Did you get the point? I mean, Sajamila?
Yes. Yes, doctor. I understand.
So now I want you to distinguish between this. Huh? Aman, you wanted to say something.
No, it's fine, doctor. Now I understand.
Is it clear now? Because when I look at if you want to understand the methods that are used by philosophers, here we can say they go beyond what is justified by the senses. So they are not because now, of course, we said but could be to some levels that maybe we are lying. Maybe when you see some when the way I behave, maybe I can tell somebody that okay, I believe, but I don't believe. Is it clear? So that is not the right determination, because when you said that when people are committing themselves, they are not there to change it. But we have this might change, So we can say that the senses alone without the proper reasoning will not justify the reality. But depends how people, like materialists, they look at intellect as something that does not have volition and will. You see, because of course depends how people look at it. If let's say the atheists, they minimize the use of human reasoning based on what based on how they see things, because they are very pragmatic, But when I look at philosophers, they're not like that, Physically, they don't justify things by senses, but they justify things by human reasoning. So for them, reasoning is very important. That's why they say only reason is acknowledged as a source of knowledge based on rationalist point of view. Have you seen that now philosophers, they created a system that is, now when you talk about rational things, how we understand this? Rational things, how? Are these things rational by themselves, or it is a process to know that these things are rationalized? How do you respond to this? And you can see the goal of philosophy is to get closer to the truth. Therefore, logic, reasoning, and argumentation. Remember that I mentioned before? We will say logic, or the way of thinking, that is reasoning, and argumentation. Because now some people say that when philosophers are trying to justify, if they provide the right argument, will we accept if they provide the right? Because when you argue with somebody, are you going to take over, or you are trying to justify? Because that is how the justification is made, So justification will be made through arguments. You might be critical, you might use a critical approach while you are agreeing with people, but you might use a descriptive approach. You might use an analytical approach. If you look at the argument, the way we provide arguments. Now, when we provide arguments, so what do we do? When we provide arguments, you are now trying to justify something, and you argue, you put forward certain arguments. Will this be sufficient? If I say Aman, okay, Aman is not the right person, if I may say. Why? Then I have to justify. So what do I do to justify?
Provide evidence.
Okay, provide evidence. So what kind of evidence do you provide? We look at what?
Empirical
Now,
evidence.
this evidence is what, Nisa? I mean, evidence is what? If I say, if I may say now, okay, Nisa, why don't you on the camera, for example?
Uh,
You are trying to provide a justification, but this justification is why? Because you want to provide what? We can say you are trying to find a reason to excuse yourself.
oh yes,
Yeah,
reason.
this reason to excuse yourself, is it clear? You might
Yes.
say that, yes, sir, maybe my camera is not working properly.
Yeah.
Then you find an excuse. That is the reason. And that is the reason that caused you not to on the camera. But here I can say this is like an alternative, because I want to give something alternative better than this. Now you've provided, and there is a problem. Is it clear? Then I might say, okay, Nisa, if that is the case, then can you go out and come in? Can you do this? Maybe we try to provide other alternatives that might help. So that is how they are trying when they provide an argument that is rationalized and justified. So they are trying, because when we discuss with somebody, for him to be convinced, then you have to provide an alternative. So that is very important here, because arguments are not just only people argue. and they look down at others, because some people are very harsh. Now, if they provide justification through alternatives, because the alternative will provide a solution for what that person is the way for the way that person is thinking, because we are trying to justify that his way of thinking is wrong. I mean, this is what the philosopher is telling us, But if the way he or she is thinking is justified by the philosopher's argumentation to be right, then they'll accept. So that is very important, So that's why maybe you heard about Bertrand Russell. Well, I mean, when he said that as soon as definite knowledge concerning any subject becomes possible. Now, philosophy talk about things possible and impossible. The subject ceases to be called philosophy and becomes a separate science. Is it clear now? When people say, okay, that is possible, because people might say, oh, that is impossible, Maybe these scientists, they argue that because when they talk about philosophy, like I mentioned, philosophy, the way we see it today, because when we are going to narrow the scope related to the study of religion, then it was introduced later on. But up to that level, we can see philosophy as very comprehensive, but standing by itself as a body of knowledge. Is it clear? That's why, I mean, later on they scattered philosophy and others are using philosophical principles, but for their own concern, even religious people, Now, when these religious people use philosophy the way it is, then they'll create another problem. That's why we have to, if we compare, let's say, Imam al-Ghazali, and the Thomas Aquinas, for example, or we have David Hume. You see these people. Imam al-Ghazali, he did not release philosophy from religion. So he looked at philosophy, how he responded to Greek philosophers within within the limits that were set by Quran, and the Sunnah of Prophet. That is very clear. But if you look at Hume or Kant, let's say, and if you look at even Aquinas, these people, they went out like the Muslim philosophers. So they went out from the limits that were set by revelation and the Sunnah of Prophet. So that will make a difference. It is like if you want to study the tree from a secular point of view, then you have to look at it the way how seculars are looking at it. But if we apply, and if we don't use at the end of if we don't use the Islamic evaluation, then this will create a problem because we are going to leave it the way it is. And for us, there is no problem because it is a part of us. If we say the tree, the only thing that these people are missing, that they don't say that the tree is created by Allah. That is the only point. But if we say the tree, yes, we plant the tree, we take care of the tree. If you want to get fruits, we have to take care of the tree. We have to trim the tree. We don't have to allow the tree to be maybe to be sick, for example. Any kind of disease might create a problem for the tree. So that is how we have to look at the whole process. Now they have provided certain chemicals, and even Muslims people before they used to do it in the way they used to do it during daytime. So that is how, when you look at it from a philosophical perspective, as I mentioned here. So now, if they are trying to what kind of truth they are talking about? Do we share the truth with the philosophers? If we say religious people, do we talk about the same truth? Or we are talking about two different truths? If philosophers are trying to justify the truth that they claim to be the truth according to them, is it the same truth that people claim to be the truth? Now, when you talk about these truth claims, we have many claims about the same truth. If we say, are we looking at the same truth? If we say God, and who is God, Like if we say, that's why here when I talk about, it would be very difficult to justify because some of them, they said that what kind of methodology they're going to use if we have different ways of interpretation within the same community. If there is no a particular method that will allow us to see the things as they are, It is like if logic, what kind of logic we are talking about? If it is reasoning, what kind of reasoning we are talking about, And argumentation, what kind of argumentation? We might have different according to, but if we talk about the philosophical community, then we expect them to use the same approach. So if it is like the outcome should be the same, should not be different, I mean, when we talk about this, the result might be related to the time that people live. That can be justified. But you say is not contradictory, logic, reasoning, and argumentation are not going to contradict each other. Otherwise, the justification will not be, the outcome of justification will not be related to this, the link between these three things. So I hope you understand, I'm not a philosopher, but I'm trying to explain according to philosophy, So I hope you understand. So we're not trying, but we have that ability. That's why when we look at the focus here, you see here now, as I mentioned before, you see on questions without having ways of definitely answering. It is as much as, a method of thinking as it is a body of knowledge. When we look at the focus of philosophy here, on questions without having ways. Now, if we said that if there is a question mark in someone's mind, so is he able to provide any solution to any question that will be raised? If I said that what time we are going to break the fast, for example, if I do not know, then will I be able to give any answer? That's why another question will come. Okay, what time did you break the fast yesterday? Maybe that would be the second question, because the first question was raised and I was not able to provide any answer. Then the second question will come. So that will make me think to provide an answer to the first question. You see how they are linked, That's why that is how, the method of thinking, how people are going to provide answer to this question. But for them, they say that when questions are raised, it means that people do not know. That's why there is questions. Can we say that we ask questions doesn't mean that we do not know? If we ask people a question, how do you know that God does exist, for example? Does it mean that we as a community that are asking this question, we do not know? Or we want these people, we raise this question to the community that is not aware of it. If they say philosophers, there is a question to those who are outside their own community, then this can be, accepted. Is it clear? That's why they say logic is central to this method. When you talk about the thinking, now you see the link, logic, the way of reasoning or thinking, then argumentation will be there, That's why thinking like a philosopher involves thinking critically about alternative, what I mentioned before, alternative possibilities. Maybe if I ask you, then you look at, okay, if we are outside, then I look at yesterday, when I look at, okay, the sunset is approaching, then I can think if we are out, let's say, if we use that approach, But now we have the time, we have the muezzin is calling, we don't have a problem. But if now there is something wrong with the electricity in the masjid, then we are not able to hear adhan. So how are we going to act? Maybe justification can be, okay, we look at yesterday approximately what time, then we look at the sunset, what time then this can justify. So that requires this thinking, But this requires a critical thinking, not just only any kind of thinking. But we have to think critical thinking, it means that you provide a solution by finding other alternatives that can help you to justify your situation. Is it clear? That's why when I look at this, to answer the question of whether there is God, a question for which we lack a definitive method of answering. If that question is raised, because these are philosophers, we can look at things we believe we know and then critically work through what those ideas entail about the existence or possible characteristics of God. How? If we say God, okay, who is God? If we say God is what? Maybe if people say that, okay, who is God? Now, if we do not know who is God, are we able to describe God by using reasoning? Are we able to think now? We say, okay, how God should be? I mean, this is very important for us to understand. And we can also imagine God exists or God does not exist. How can we imagine? And then reason through what either possibility implies about the world. The same thing goes if God and the world. And imagining alternatives, possibilities, we must critically work through what each possibility must entail. I mean, they try to raise any question, then if there is a possibility to provide an answer to any question, then they will take it, If that is in line with the logic, reasoning, and argumentation that we justify it. So are you able to understand? Because that might be a question. You see, like we say, if you are caught in a situation that you are not, maybe I mentioned before, or not, I don't know. If we are drawn into the river, I don't know to swim, I don't know how to swim. What will make me swim? Let's say now you are crossing the IUM River, and there is a heavy rain, then the flood is coming, and then you are in the middle of the river, then you are caught in this situation. You don't know how to swim. So what will make you swim?
The survival instinct.
Survival instinct. So now do you have time to think that now you have to survive? I mean, if you look at this situation, that's okay. Now this might push you forward because you don't want to die. Is it clear? Do you want to die?
No.
Then what you're going to do, Aman? So now if that...
I'm just going to try with my limited knowledge how to survive.
So
how
now,
to swim.
I mean, do you have time to think to find a solution, or what you're going to do? I mean, your way of thinking will make, I mean, that person in that situation to engage what you're supposed to engage.
Senses.
Senses. Now, I mean, the thinking will, because that is very fundamental. When I talk about the logic here, the intellect itself, when you see, then you see this, for example, a danger, that you are in danger now. You feel that you are in danger. Now, now your way of thinking is telling you that to save yourself, then you have to move. You have to move both the body, your hands and your legs, even though you don't know to swim, but move, move. Maybe even somebody shouting at you from there outside, whether they say, okay, move, just move, But that is how the instinct, as you mentioned, that is a part of it, because that is related to this will make people, and of course the danger, we say, nobody in that situation, but does not mean that people, maybe even those who are caught in this situation, the possibility for them to come out safely will be there, and the possibility of not will be there, there will be two possibilities. If he tries very hard, the possibility of saving himself from that situation will be there, but at the same time might not be, depends on the reaction. And of course, if we look at it from our perspective, religious perspective, then it is a different situation. But people might say that if he's not moving, he doesn't know, then this might create a problem. Might say, okay, that is why that person was not able to come out. So that's why, I mean, when you look at this kind of situation, if we said that how people imagine, now when we ask a person, how do you know that God is there? If we said, how do you know that God exists? So how they justify? Have you come into this kind of experience with people who try to justify that God does exist?
Some of them use the analogy of the air.
No, an energy of what?
Air.
There. Okay, how?
Because they say that that how we cannot see the air, but we can have the oxygen and we can feel the air and everything. So that's kind of show that our God is exists, even though we cannot see God or everything.
Even those who don't believe, right? We are not talking about because philosophers, they don't believe in God, but they created the concept of God, you know. Even among them, I mean, from our perspective, we have different justification, but that is what you said that, I mean, we justify to them that God exists. We use this kind of analogy. But for them, they said that, I mean, yes, I mean, like you mentioned, they use the sense like, okay, I feel that God is there, you know. Even though we tell them, how do you know? Because this is what I feel. This is what I imagine. Maybe somebody said, this is what I imagine, that God is there. Because when you look at this existence, that would be impossible for someone to take care of it. They might argue that way by using reasoning, you know. But this is from down to top. Even when you tell them, okay, why don't you read the Quran, for example? They say, no, I don't have to read the Quran because I don't believe in revelation. I don't believe in religion. But I believe, I mean, I feel that God is there. And we tell them, then who told you that God is there? Will that be, I mean, human reasoning will be sufficient for them to tell them that God is there, God does exist? I mean, the way they argue, the way they think, because they're trying to provide any kind of alternative that to help their position. I mean, if we say to defend their position. Can you say that there is a possibility for God, if we say that God exists or that God does not exist? Are these two possibilities? It is like if we say that, because I mean, is this kind of approach, is it used to justify the existence of God? Can you use this approach to justify the existence of God? If we say if God does not exist, what will happen? And if God does exist, what will happen? How do you argue? Oh, this one up.
If we talk about the system, the universe and everything, because it is in the systematic and orderly manner, so it cannot be possible for human being or any other entity with limited knowledge to handle it.
Okay, that is good. So, I mean, if people say that if God does not exist, then how this will be managed? How this existence uh, came into being, you know? So we can argue on that basis, even we have those people, but we have those who don't believe at all. You know, they said that, okay, that is not necessary to say that there is God, but we have laws of physics, you know, but still they try to justify that there is a law, there is a system. But when you raise the question, okay, who created that system? I mean, for those who are out, that's why they apply here. They say, okay, it's not necessary for God to exist because everything, if everything they believe that exists by itself just like that, then there is no need for God to come and, I mean, to push these things to existence, you know. Because if they apply the same approach to God, then the possibility for God not to exist will be there. If we look at it from their perspective, because if they apply to the existence, because God is a part of existence. Now, when you said that God is not a part of existence, because existence, it is subjected to change. There is a beginning and there is an end. But we said that God is outside the existence because he's the one who created the existence. When I talk about the existence, what exists? You know, when did this come into existence? So God is not related to this at all. But if we look at from the human reasoning, that human reasoning is above because God is perceived through human reasoning, then in that case, this God will become product of human reasoning. Is it clear? That's why people, they can change as they like because it is within the limit of human reason. That's why they consider this as a rational, rational God. Rational God a God that is perceived through human reasoning. Anything, existence perceived through human reasoning is not like the revealed way of understanding the existence. Because Allah is telling us in Quran that how He created everything. It's not like a person is telling how he uses his reasoning and thinking to justify the creation of existence. So there are two different things, That's why the God of philosophers, we mentioned previously, is not a real God, is a mechanical God, is a deity, Like, a tree we can see. The tree is the creation of Allah, is it clear? But if you look at the God of philosophers, is not responsible God. It does not respond to people. That's why have you seen even Muslims are telling us, so why you bring Allah in? What does it have to do with Allah? When we tell them, ittaqillah, why you are doing this? Don't you, fear Allah? When you do this, they say, why you bring Allah in? It doesn't have to do anything with Allah. Why? Because they think that they can do things without the knowledge of Allah. Imagine a Muslim who believes in Allah is not supposed to do that, because he should live according to that. But if we look at God through reasoning, then this will be a situation. So we might have those who have been affected by this kind of approach, and they think that, God will not see what I do. So if I act now I'm not behaving like, if you see a Muslim drinking alcohol, he said, no, I'm not a Muslim now. He might say that, but he forgot that he's a Muslim. You see, then now how we limit, like philosophers, they limit themselves according to the way they are doing things, So they have one approach that they have to use, the methodology. So let us, here I just wanted you to look at this. If we look at how these are justified, like if we say that philosophy of religion, because it is a part of philosophy now, because that is our focus, So we want to see how philosophy is studying or looking at things as a whole. Okay, why this is? How philosophy is looking at things as a whole. But now when you look at philosophy of religion, as I mentioned before at the beginning, that it was a body of knowledge within philosophy that was introduced later on. If we say that after the 18th century, when Darwin's theory came into existence, because before that philosophy was another body of knowledge that through it they studied everything. But now they wanted to study only religion, then they call this like philosophy of education, philosophy of science, philosophy of technology, philosophy of divinity, whatever you call it. But now when I talk about philosophy of religion, it is a part of philosophy. That's why it is a sub-discipline of philosophy and covers a vast range of topics, like when you look at how religious people try to rationalize things related to religious concepts, let's say starting with God, and you can see other concepts like this, the problem of evil that has become this long time ago, since even previously they talk about evil. But let's say now the way how, if we say the philosophers study religion, it is very limited. Of course, it's very different from scientists, but now they look at this concept, life after death, ethics and miracles, for example, as well as, the focus is to define the notion of faith and its rational justification. Did you get the point? Let's say if we look at Iman or faith, belief, for example, how do people believe in God? Would that be sufficient to say that, okay, our Iman is justified by human reasoning? Can we justify our Iman by human reasoning? Or it will be the opposite? If a person does not believe in Allah, does he have Iman? Does he have faith?
No.
Does he have faith or not?
He believed that there are no God because he didn't believe in Allah.
No, if we said that faith, does he have faith or not?
Because faith is something that which is to believe. Maybe he have faith, but not the Islamic faith.
Yeah, okay. I mean, now that is, I mean, right. When you say that, okay, it does mean that people don't believe because they believe in something. They have faith in something. But when you relate these two, let's say from Islamic perspective, so you can say that Iman, it is, if you say it is when a person commits himself to the truth that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to believe in Allah, because that commitment requires a strong conviction that he's convinced, So it means like if philosophers are using the sound reasoning like anyone else, then we believe that sound reasoning is not contradictory to the revelation. So when they come into contact with revelation, so then they will achieve what what is in them, because that is how we can say. Then they say, I believe in Quran, I believe in Allah, I believe in this. Why? Because that is justified, and as I mentioned here, so if they find that, then it is okay. But they need revelation to justify, because pure human reasoning will not be able to justify the true belief of somebody. Even if they look at I mean that person, if they look at a Muslim from the perspective of Muslim, but at the end this would be a rational justification, then this not provide the same outcome when a Muslim is looking at this Muslim, like a philosopher is looking at him. So that will make a difference. That's why when you look at John Hick, what he said, the philosophical thinking about religion that studies the concepts and belief systems of the religions, as well as the prior phenomena of religious experience and the activities of worship and mediation on which this belief system rests and out of which they have arisen. This is very important. We look at how the activities, because they believe that for us, we don't divide like that, because these are very connected, these are very, it is like we look at Islam as a way of life. We don't look at Islam like, okay, within Islam we have Arkanul Iman, we have Arkanul Islam, we need Taqwa, we need Ihsan, we need righteous deeds, how a person become righteous. So all these are coming together. Exactly. But for a person, first thing that he has to do, he has to know who is Allah. Is it clear? So we don't engage him with knowing what is next, because when he's able to justify the difference between the creator and the creation of Allah, everything else like wa malaikati wa kutubihi wa malaikati wa rasulihi, all these are the creation, because they are created by Allah. They belong to that category, Is it clear? Whereas when you look at Allah is very fundamental. So that's why when people are convinced, if we say the highest level that stands among the principles of faith related to the creator and the creation of Allah is the creator himself. Because when people, they know that who created them, they'll know who created others. As simple as that, But will human reasoning be sufficient to justify the being of the creator without referring to, but I mean, if we look at it from the even logical perspective, let's say if we use the pure intellect, that the philosophy, if we say that if human reasoning, it is perfect, to allow people to understand the reality of God the way they look at themselves, because we believe that man is a living being, like we see, So God should be a living being, not a deity that people can play around with him. And now, when you believe that God is the creator, then the creator should communicate with what he created. If we use this kind of reasoning, then how does God communicate with a person? Now, if that God is justified through human reasoning and is within the limit of reason, then this is not the God that people should believe in. That's why the God that they have to believe is not the rational God or the rationalized God, but is the revealed God, the one who communicates with men. So now if human reasoning will justify that, and this will bring people to a higher level. That's why they have to come into contact with the revelation. Is it clear? I mean, this should be the way, And at the same time, if people they use the right reasoning, they have to understand that the God that this human reasoning is justifying is a God who responds to their prayers. If a person has a problem and he believes that there is God, then he believes that this God will help him. So that should be the right way, until he comes into contact with the reality. So because the philosophers, the problem that I see here, it is like they don't use the pure human reasoning because they speculated. Is it clear? Because if it is everything is created by human reasoning, then it is product of human reasoning. So there is no such difference that God is there. If it is product of man, then finish. This is very important. But when they study religion, so at the end they evaluate it through the philosophical perspective. That's why when you look at here, like people should know the fact that philosophy is not like theology. So here you see the difference. So the methodology will be different. So you don't expect that methodology will be like the theological perspective or religious perspective. We said that. That is theology itself, as I mentioned, Aqidah or creed, it is a part of religion. So why they focus on theology? Now philosophers, they are talking about what is the focus of philosophers. What is the focus of philosophers? So why theology is very important for them? Why not religion? So how do you think? So are you following up? Does it make sense when what we are talking about here? I would like to know. And you can see how the primary concern of the philosophy when they study religion to assess the sort of reasons, now that thoughtful people have advanced for and against religious beliefs and not to justify or refute those religious beliefs. You see now? That is the way how philosophers, as I mentioned, at the end, they were not just trying to, when they opposed the claims of the Greek clergies, that they claim that the sun is God and moon is God. So they oppose and they justify it. So they are not trying to, as I mentioned, to prove that what these people are saying is right and wrong, but they're trying to prove that, what the human reasoning is justifying it is right, and it is against what these people claim. Because the way they want to see that what kind of reasoning these religious people use to justify what they are claiming. Is it clear? And what they believe. So you have to understand this. And you can see here, these are if we look at the scope, what is the content, what does philosophy study when it studies religion? Because we look at other disciplines, we have culture, civilization, whatever it is. And you can see this like the highest is concept of God, holy, salvation, worship, creation, sacrifice, eternal life. So they want to see how this kind of approach it is understood by religious people. Is it clear? Maybe I think, do you have any question? Do you have any question?
Doctor,
Yes.
will you give the slides to us?
Yeah, I'll share the slides with you, Nisa. No problem. I
So,
can send
thank
you
you,
copies.
Doctor.
I'll share even some books that I have referred to, so that might help you. Usually we, of course, for philosophical methodology, what has been in the study of religion, there are other writings, but we usually refer to John Hick. But I can say that John Hick, he claims to be a Christian. He claimed to be a Christian, but if you look at the approach that he used, uh, is not according to Christianity. It is a pure philosophical approach, because philosophers, that is how they look at the reality. So when you look at, as I mentioned before, they were part of the community itself, but they rebelled against the community. So now we have to differentiate between philosophy that is used by religious people and philosophy that is used by philosophers. If John Hick was a Christian, a Catholic, then he was not supposed to provide this kind of argument in the study of religion. So he was not supposed to tell us this, That's why here, when we mentioned previously, the way they use thinking and they use critical thinking, that is very important. And you can see now through what the observation that they see and the experience that they go through, they try to justify, because what is the source of what is here? It is related to metaphysics, to the unseen, because when you look at al-ghaibiyat from our perspective, if we look at Allah, is the oneness of Allah. Allah is the creator, as I mentioned, is not related to the existence because He is the one who created everything. Is it clear? But when you look at what has been created by Allah that we don't see, then you talk about the world of the angels, the world of the jinn, the world of after death, and the world before this. We are talking about ghaibiyat related to the physical world. Is it clear? Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not related to this at all, because Allah is not a part of the creation. He is the creator. Is it clear? But we can say He is the one who created everything. Now we, from our perspective, we say this is the manifestation of the creator, because when people look at the creation, this will make them understand the creator. If they use this kind of reasoning, somehow they come to certain levels. Is it clear? But to justify, then they need revelation. That is the problem. If I can say that how to solve the problem of the philosophers, it is that they have to follow the revelation. They have to refer to the revelation. Otherwise, because their philosophical argumentation should be justified by revelation. Otherwise, it will lead them to another extreme. I hope this is clear. Huh? So maybe we can stop here for today. Do we have any question before we leave? Do you have any question?
No, sir.
So wait a second. I'm trying to take a photo, okay? So do you have anything to say? Do you have anything before we leave?
No, doctor, everything is clear.
Okay, then if there is nothing, then let us stop here by reciting Surah Al-Asr and Tasbih Kafara. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Okay, barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and have a blessed iftar as well as Eid al-Fitr Mubarak, because we are not going to meet except after Eid. So I'll let you. Okay, fi amanillah.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Doktor.
Doktor.
Salam
Thank you so
iftar
much,
and
doctor.
Aidil Mubarak tu.
Mubarak
Selamat
salam.
Raya.
Happy Hari Raya.
Eid
Mubarak,
Mubarak fikum.
Dr.
Waalaikumsalam.